guys, and welcome back to my channel. I have a really fun tutorial for you today. We're going to be making this interchangeable or circular knitting needles case. Now I had a lot of requests after my last video. If you didn't see that, we made one for DPNs or straight knitting needles. So today we're going to take care of all those interchangeables and in a super cute and fun pouch. Here's kind of what the inside looks like. There's places for all of your different sizes, and then these pockets right here can hold your cords. I've got a little needle minder right here. And then on the back here, we have a fun little zipper pocket where you can store things like stitch markers or little scissors or a swatch gauge or anything like that. So this project is really fun. It's really easy. It's easier than it looks actually. So I hope you'll join me for today's tutorial. Let's go ahead and get started. So supplies for this project are super easy. I used 6 different fat quarters because I wanted 6 different colors of fabric. So that's kind of what I recommend, but the cutting instructions are all in the PDF below. So you can find out the exact cutting instructions for all of your pieces. But you'll need some fabric for your binding, the outside of your case, the lining for the zipper pocket, and then 2 different colors for the inside pockets, and then a lining piece for the inside of the case. You'll need a small piece of batting for your needle protector, or needle minder, and then you'll need some fun ribbon, a zipper, of course your regular sewing tools. I use an Olfa rotary trimmer and a Creative Grids ruler. I also suggest having some pins and some wonder clips handy. Those just come in handy when you're trying to get everything to stay in place. And then lastly, you'll need a piece of batting. All right, I think that's it. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, I have set all of our other pieces aside for right now, and we are going to be working on the outside zipper pocket. So you're gonna want your outside fabric piece. I believe this is piece A. You're gonna want your lining fabric piece, which is piece F. You're also gonna want your outer fabric piece B and your lining piece E. And we're going to be inserting our zipper. Now I recommend a 12-inch zipper. My zipper is way longer. It just happens to be the one I had that matched my project. You really only need a 12-inch zipper. I think this one is like 18. So I'm gonna go ahead and set the larger pieces aside, and we're gonna work on these smaller pieces first. And so what we're gonna do is we're going to layer our outside bag fabric right facing up, and then we're going to lay our zipper on top of it face down. So the zipper pull is right side of a zipper, so we're gonna put it right side down. And as you can see, my zipper pulls out here for right now. That's totally where I want it. I want it kind of out of my way so that I can sew without having to deal with that. Then I'm going to take my lining piece and put that right side down. We're going to just line everything up on top here. And if you'd like, you can put a couple wonder clips on there just to keep it from moving around. And then we're just going to take this over to our sewing machine, and we're going to sew right along this edge as close to our zipper teeth as we can get. Now you're welcome to use a zipper foot if you have one. I'm not going to worry about that because I just like to use my regular foot. It gets close enough in my opinion, but whatever works for you is fine. So let's go ahead and do that. Now I actually kind of have my foot sitting on my zipper here, so let's see if we can keep it on there. Okay, so here's our piece, and I'm just going to take this over to the ironing board and just press that back and this back. And then I'm going to just run a top stitch right along here just to kind of seal that off and keep everything in place. Alright, so here is our zipper, and I just ran a top stitch right across the top of it. We're just going to do the exact same thing to put it onto the other side of our pocket. So we're going to take the outside piece of fabric and we're going to put the zipper again right sides down on top of it, and we're just going to make sure we're lining up these edges. And then we're going to put our lining fabric right side down on top of the zipper, and again we're going to take it over to our machine and just sew right along here as close as you can get to the zipper teeth. Just make sure all of these are lined up on the sides. Okay, your piece should be looking something like this. Again, I'm going to take this over to the ironing board, press this side open and press this side open. And then I'm going to run a top stitch around here just to secure it. You should basically have your zipper, now your 2 outside pieces, and the lining for this front pocket. Okay, so I just ran my stitch down there really quick. I didn't think you guys need to see that again. I did the same thing I did on the other side. So now this is very important. Make sure that you take your zipper pull. We're just going to pull it into the center here. And then I'm gonna just stick a pin there so that these don't come apart while I'm cutting them. I just want them to kind of stay together. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and trim off our excess zipper. And this is why it kind of doesn't really matter what size zipper you have, as long as it's large enough. Okay. And then the next thing I'm going to do is just take this over to the sewing machine really quick, and I'm just going to go back and forth right here and back and forth right here just to secure that zipper so it's not moving around while we're trying to assemble our case. All right guys, there you go. As you can see, I just ran a quick stitch right here and right here just to hold our zipper together while we're assembling our bag. That way it doesn't move around and get all wonky. But essentially the hard part is over. The zipper is always the hardest part, and as you can see, it was quite easy. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is put on our outside ribbon. If you remember, this is the outside of our bag. And so I'm just going to take my ribbon and fold it in half here and just mark that this is the halfway point for my ribbon. And then we're going to measure our bag here, and these instructions are in the PDF. And so what you're going to do is go 6.5 inches in from the side and 4 inches down, which is approximately right there. We're going to line up our ribbon right center right at that spot, and then we're going to take this over to the sewing machine. And I'm going to scoop mine up just a little bit because my ribbon's kind of thicker. And I'm just going to put a little pin right here where I know I want to sew it. I'm just going to take that over to the sewing machine, and I'm just going to do a quick, probably just back and forth a couple of times just to secure our ribbon, because when we fold up our bag here, as you can see, it's going to kind of fold up like this. Then that ribbon will be right on that fold crease. Okay? All right, so I'm going to do that, and I'll meet you right back here. Okay, so as you can see, our ribbon is now secured to the outside of our bag. We're going to go ahead and take this piece and set it aside for right now because we're done preparing that portion. And the next thing that we're going to prepare are inside pockets. And this is going to sound a little bit different than what we normally do, so just bear with me, follow the instructions, and you should be okay. So we're going to take both of our larger pieces of inner pocket, and that is piece G, and we're going to put them right sides together. And same thing with the smaller pocket, which should be pieces H, I believe. Follow the pattern, of course. And put those right sides together. And then what we're going to do is we're going to sew 1/4 inch down the shorter sides. These should be 8 inches. This one is, I think, 12.5. So just sew just down these 8-inch sides. And then this one's a square, so it doesn't matter which 2 sides you pick to sew down. But just sew down 2 opposite sides, but not these side pieces, if that makes sense. So top and bottom, top and bottom. So here are our pieces. We just sewed along the top edges, but not the sides. And so now what we're going to do is just flip them right side out. Do that to both pieces. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is just take them over to the ironing board and just press out these edges right along those seams, just so they're nice, lay nice and flat. And then I'm going to take them over to my sewing machine and just run a top stitch right along that edge and again along this edge, just to give them a more finished look. Okay, so here are our 2 pieces, and these are the sewn kind of finished edges, if you will, and then these are the raw edges. And I've just taken mine over to my ironing board, hopefully you can see that, and I just literally folded them in half and pressed them so that I could find the center of both. And then I'm going to just line up those centers and lay the smaller pocket on top of the larger pocket, and you should have about 1.5 inches or so of your larger pocket showing, which is about what I have, so I think we're good there. And then now I'm going to make, just pin this in place so that it doesn't move around on me. So now there's a diagram in the download that tells you how far apart to make these pockets. So essentially, we're going to be making the knitting needle pockets on these 2 sides, and I have a diagram on how far apart to make each of your lines. So you'll want to follow that. If you want to use this for standard traditional like size 0 to size 15 interchangeable needles. If you want to make your pockets different sizes, by all means go ahead. You can totally customize this bag at this time. But I'm going to go ahead and follow my instructions and make lines where I indicate on the pattern. Now we're going to take this over to the machine, and I'm just going to sew right on these lines, and I will backspace or backstitch at the ends here just to give this a little bit more stability, so when you're taking things in and out you don't tear it. So yep, I'm just going to go do that on everywhere that I made a line, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, I finished doing all my horizontal lines here, and the next thing I'm going to do is run a stitch right down that crease down the middle, and that'll just keep our needles from falling through. If you put it on this side, it won't fall out this side. Okay, I took this over to my ironing board and just ironed it, so as you can see, all of my marks are now gone. I also trimmed up all of my threads, and we are ready to move on. So we're gonna set this aside. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is just take our small piece of batting, and we're going to center it on the inside lining of our bag, and this should be piece D, I believe. I'm just gonna take it over to the sewing machine, and I'm just gonna sew right down this edge, and this edge. Don't worry about this one, it'll get caught up when we do our binding, and then I'll meet you right back here. Here we go. I didn't show you because pretty easy and straightforward. All right, I think that's it. We're ready to start assembling our case. Okay, we're gonna start assembling our case now, and so we're gonna layer things. There's gonna be a lot of layers, so just pay attention. It's also written in the instructions. But we're going to take our zipper piece and lay that right side down. So the outside of your bag should be facing down. And I did forget to mention, make sure that you trim this piece up to 8 by 15.5. The instructions are in the PDF as well, but this could have gotten a little bit longer depending on how much, you know, how close to your zipper you got and whatnot. So just trim it up so it's the same size as everything else. Then we're going to take our outside pocket lining. We're going to put that right side down on top of there. The next thing we're going to do is take some batting, and we're going to line that up. This will just give our case a little bit of body and stability. And then on top of that, we're going to take our inside lining piece. Like I said, lots of layers here, but don't worry. Everything is going to turn out great. And then lastly, we are going to take our needle pockets that we just created and put those in here as well. And what you want to do is line it up approximately 1.5 inches from the bottom, or the side without your little needle minder. So 1.5 inches from the bottom. Okay, and then we're going to take some Wonder Clips, and we are just going to clip this whole thing together so that it doesn't move around. Make sure all your layers are nice and lined up. And then we're going to take this over to the sewing machine and just run a quick basting stitch all the way around the outside edge just to hold it in place. And if you don't know what a basting stitch is, just set your machine to the longest stitch length possible, and it'll be, you know, stitches that are like about that long or so, and you just are basically tacking it together. You can also just pin this together and skip this step if you're pretty confident with your binding skills. If you're a new sewer, I suggest doing this. Just make sure that when you're doing it, you don't catch your outside ribbon. We don't want to sew our ribbon into this. Okay, so here it is. I just did a quick stitch to keep it all together. Mine got a little bit wonky on this corner up here. That's totally fine. This is a lot of layers, so I'm just going to take a ruler and just kind of square it up anywhere I need to. Just make sure you don't accidentally trim off your ribbon here. The next thing we're going to do is prepare our binding, and then we are going to get that attached, and we'll be done with this project, guys. And all we're going to do is take our strips and put them right sides together, and then just sew right down this edge 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to take that end and add the next strip and the next strip, and I'll show you what I mean over at the machine. Okay, so here we are over at our machine, and I just have 2 strips, and they are right sides together, just like I said. So we're gonna go ahead and just sew down 1/4 inch. Okay, now I'm not gonna cut my thread or anything. I'm going to take this top piece, here it is, and put that one right side up. And then I'm going to grab my next piece here and match that up right sides down so they're together. And keep sewing. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing. Take this top piece, flip it right side up again, and then take my last piece here, put it right side down, and sew. Okay, now I've got these pieces all sewn together. I'm going to take this over to my ironing board, and I will show you how to press this for our binding. Okay, so here we are over at my ironing board, and I don't know if you guys noticed when I was sewing just now, but I forgot to put my stitch length back to normal, so it was still at 6. So don't forget to put your stitch length back to normal after you do that basting stitch. Anyway, little lesson learned there. Okay, so what we're gonna do to prepare our binding is just take our strip and fold it in half so that the wrong sides are together, okay? And then we're just going to sew, or iron, press all down this strip until we get to the end. And when I come to a seam right here, I'm just going to press that open just to kind of reduce the bulk here. So I'm just going to press that open, fold it in half, and keep going. By the way, if you're wondering what iron this is, it's a Panasonic cordless, and I will link it in the description box below for you. I love this iron. It stays really nice and hot, and I've had it for over a year now, maybe 2 years, I'm not sure. And yeah, I've just honestly never had a problem with it. Love it. And I like that I don't have to be fumbling around with the cord as well. And there we go. Okay, so we have our case here, and then we've got our binding that we just created. And I'm gonna start kind of in the middle here. So I'm going to overlap my binding, I don't know, to about there. I kind of eyeball this. And then I'm gonna start somewhere around here, so maybe halfway through this first one. Honestly, it really doesn't matter. I'm just trying to be specific for you guys. And we're gonna go ahead and sew all along the edge. We've got the raw edge of our binding placed against the raw edge of our project. So this is the folded edge, this is the raw edge. And I'm going to just do a back stitch right here. Okay. And then now we are going to just lay it nice and flat along the edge of our project and sew all the way down using my 1/4 inch foot as a guide. Also, side note, make sure your ribbons, again, are out of the way. All right, I'm gonna stop when I get about 1/4 inch from the edge of my project here, and I can feel it with my finger. I'm going to leave my needle in the down position, turn it just kind of at a slight diagonal, and then back stitch just to secure that stitch. And then cut my threads. And then I'm going to turn my project. The next thing I'm going to do is take my binding, and right now it's going this way. I'm going to place my finger right here and fold my binding, pulling it straight up vertically so that now the raw edge of the binding is lining up with this right side of my project. So I've got this little kind of triangle fold here. I'm gonna leave my finger there and then pull it straight down on top of my finger so that now, as you can see, the raw edges are still folded and we've got this little, nice little triangle fold here. I'm gonna leave that nice and flat and then keep going. And I'll do a little back stitch right there. Okay, again, I'm at 1/4 inch away from my end here, so I'm going to leave my needle in the down position, turn it to a diagonal, back stitch, cut my threads, and turn it again. And same thing, I'm going to hold my finger here and pull my binding strip straight up and down, kind of finger press that, leave my finger there, and then pull it straight back down toward me. Okay, so now our raw edges are lining up on this side. A little back stitch. Make sure everything is lined up. My zipper is right here, so I'm actually going to pull it out of my way and keep going. Okay, now we are coming back up to the side we started on here. So here's where we left off and we're almost there. So I'm just gonna go ahead and stop, leave myself a nice gap here. I'm gonna do a back stitch, cut my threads, and then I'll show you how to join these two pieces of binding. Okay, so here we are, and I actually pulled back a little bit so I had some more room here. So make sure you leave yourself about 5 or 6 inches on the side here to deal with your binding. So I'm going to figure out about where halfway is, so about here. And I'm gonna go ahead and just mark this piece with my fingernail, and then I'm going to trim that off. Okay, and then I'm going to lay this piece on top of it and just overlap by 1/4 of an inch. So I'm just gonna make sure they're pulled nice and tight so we don't have any puckering or extra fabric. And again, I'm just kind of marking that with my fingernail. It's probably hard for you to see, but when you're doing it, you'll be able to see yours a little bit better. And I'm gonna cut that there. So like hopefully you can see now, they overlap by about 1/4 of an inch. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, so once your pieces are overlapping by 1/4 of an inch, just take them and you're gonna have to probably fold your project a little bit, but lay them together just like if they were already sewn. And then you can open them up. We're gonna take these over to the machine, and this can be a little bit finicky, that's why I said to give yourself some space. We're just gonna sew down this edge 1/4 of an inch, just like you did when we were putting our binding together. And then when you open it up, it should lay nice and flat, okay? So again, take your pieces nice and flat like they are and just pull them together and then open them up and sew along that edge. And I always just fold my project in half to release some of the tension on my strips here. Okay, so I just sewed these together, as you can see. Now we can unfold our project. And if we did it correctly, voila, it just lays nice and flat. So I'm just gonna take these really quickly and finger press them open and fold it in half, just like we did before. And then we can just pick up where we left off up here. And I'll just do a back stitch there, and then when I get to the other end. So we've got our binding all across our piece here. Now we're simply going to wrap the binding around to the other edge. And we're just going to run a stitch right as close to that edge as you can, is how I like to do it. You can also hand bind this if you prefer. I do have a hand binding tutorial on my website. If I remember, I will link it below, but you can always search how to bind a quilt, and I show both hand and machine binding on that one. Okay, we're getting up to this first corner, so all we do is fold this up. It was kind of like this before. We just fold it around that corner, fold up the bottom, and then fold the side in so that it meets with this little mitered corner. And I just do one little back stitch right there, just, I don't know. I've never had a binding come off, but you know, just makes me feel better. And then we're just going to keep going. Alright guys, and then as you saw, the last thing I did was just run a stitch right down the center of this. All of the layers, just make sure that you've got your ribbon nice and flat, and what that'll do is keep your pocket from going all the way into the end, unless you would like a pocket to go that far. I didn't want my stuff to get stuck clear down on this side. If you don't want that, you don't have to do that. Otherwise, I think we're done with this project. You can load it up with all your goodies, tie it up, and yeah, you're ready to go. All right, guys, that's it for today's project. I hope you enjoyed this one. As you can see, it really wasn't that hard. I know a lot of you might be worrying about the zipper back here, but as you could see, it was really super easy to put together, and this is a really fun little project. I think you could probably put it together in like a couple hours, maybe even less than that, because I was filming. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, please make sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe below. That way I know to keep making tutorials like this for you. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you next time.